Hi, we're back today and we're going to look at chapter 1 in critical thinking. And I want to go through just a few things about how I want your homework to look and what I want you to do with it. Um, you have two parts really for each chapter. Some of the chapters, like chapter 3, um, we're going to do in more than one section. And so you'll have a 3A and a 3B. Mainly because it's more technical, it has more stuff in it, and I want you to take a little bit more time with it. Chapters 1 and 2 are pretty straightforward, and they're basically just setting up vocabulary and how we talk about things and what these different things are in this context, okay? And so there are two ways I want you to look at the different vocabulary in here. One is the big words, okay? That's my thing about them. These are words that you should have memorized and have running around in your head their definition. It's slightly different from what you would normally expect. It's a big word because it covers a lot of ground in this chapter or in this book. And what I'd like you to do is to copy down, memorize, put it on a 3x5 card, whatever you have to do to get it running around in your head pretty consistently with the words that Dr. Vaughn has given us. We all know what an argument is, but when we're talking about argument in this context, we're not talking about a fight. We're not even talking about a disagreement. An argument is really the way somebody puts forth an idea, okay, their stance, their idea, their hypothesis when we get into scientific stuff. And so we're going to walk through chapter 1 and look at kind of how these things fit together. The homework pieces, one is what I call a summary outline thing. What I want you to do is to spend some serious time kind of figuring out and looking at and kind of refocusing the chapter. If there are things in here that you already know, this is old stuff for you, you don't need a whole lot of work on that. But for homework, what I want you to do is a page, okay? When I'm assigning a summary outline thing, and I'll explain the thing part in just a minute, I want about a page of work, okay? Which is another reason why I break up some of the chapters into more than one part, because the chapters have more than one part, and they're going to take some time for us to kind of incorporate into who we are and what we do. So for chapter 1, one page of whatever is useful for you to remember the information on the chapter, okay? Some folks need to write the narrative, okay? Here's what happens, and then the end. That's fine, okay? That's a normal summary. Some folks really like the idea of a formal outline. Dr. Vaughn sets up very specific and consistent headings. You can use that. Make sure that it's useful for you, though. If you just have a list of headings and you don't know what's underneath them, it's not useful, okay? If your brain works better in pictures and colors and things like that, draw me a map, okay? Make the circle bubbles, put things in different colors, highlight, whatever works for you, okay? You're going to hear me say that a lot. For the summary outline thing, whatever part of that you want to do, great. You don't have to do it the same way all the time. Sometimes a mind map or a flow chart or whatever is the best thing. Sometimes you're going to need more details. Sometimes you're going to need less. So whatever makes that chapter kind of stand out for you, great. That's what you do, okay? If you're drawing pictures and things like that by hand, just scan it in your computer and pop it up on Blackboard. If you're doing, other kinds of things, maybe you really like to draw on the computer, use Paint or whatever, save it as a document or save it as a JPEG or whatever, pop it up on Blackboard. My only concern about any of that is that it's in a form I can read, okay? So if you have fancy software and you're doing all this wonderful stuff, send it along, pop it into Blackboard. Sometimes Blackboard's filters make it so I can't see things. And I'll let you know, hey, I see that you've done this wonderful thing here, but I can't open it. Can you try it as a email attachment? And we'll see if that works. I want to make this as easy for you as possible to get me your information, but it has to be something I can open or I can't give you credit. Okay, so we'll play with that and see how we go. So that's the first piece. The other piece is a series of questions in the exercises. Chapters 1 and 2 put all their exercises at the end of the chapter. Easy to find, no big deal. Chapter 3 breaks up the exercises after a significant section, okay? So 3.1, 3.2, they're closer to the front of the chapter, and then there's a couple other spots that are kind of put in there. So you're going to have to look for them sometimes, but most of the time if you go to the end of the chapter, that's where they're going to show up. So answer those questions as completely as possible. Read the directions, read the freaking directions. That's going to set your work apart from everybody else's. If you don't read the instructions, you're going to miss out on points, or you're going to make it harder than it is. Okay. Sometimes they give you all this information, and really all they want is is it logical? Is it true? Okay. Sometimes he gives you some information, and you do have a lot of work to do. I try to make it so that it balances out from assignment to assignment, so that you're not spending a bazillion hours trying to figure out all the questions. Now, you can always do more than I assign. If there's a particular concept that is troubling for you, or you're having trouble figuring it out, do more work. Okay, it's just like math class in that way. I have to do all the homework, all the questions in math class, so that I can really get things cemented in my head. If that's the case for you in this class, I'll give you a couple extra points. Not a big deal. So read the directions. I'm not asking you to do all the questions in the exercises. So pay attention to which ones I do want you to do. Okay? Okay, into chapter 1. In chapter 1, we have 2 sets of words that I really want you to look at. The big words, and there are 3 in this chapter. Critical thinking, defined on page 3. Argument, defined on page 10. And statement, defined on page 9. You want to make sure that you're using those definitions, or the ones that are in the glossary in the back of the book. Okay? Don't look them up on Google. Don't dictionary.com them. Some of them are going to be significantly different from that. Always, always, always use your book. Okay? So, the other ones are keywords, and Dr. Vaughn is nice enough to give us a list at the end of every chapter of the keywords in that chapter. The ones that I have little stars on, those are our big words. What I do for the big words on the test is you have to write out the definition. Okay? The keywords from the various chapters, what I do is I put them in a matching. And so you have the keywords on one side and definitions on the other, and you have to say A, B, C, X, whatever. Okay? I usually give you about 20 for that particular exam. So, critical thinking on page 3 is the systematic evaluation or formulation of beliefs or statements by rational standards. And that's very important, that last little piece there, rational standards. It's not just evaluating things because we like them, okay? Rational standards means that we're giving certain things a certain weight, okay? And it matters because critical thinking gives you skills, okay? Gives you skills for learning, gives you skills for exploring. It can give you a sense of empowerment because you do understand how things work, and you've spent time on it, okay? Our first real discussion board is going to be a quote by Socrates, one of his most famous ones, "The unexamined life is not worth living." And don't be too hard on him. He's not saying that we should kill people who don't think about their lives. What he's saying is, as a philosopher, as a person who is educated, a person who cares about life and life in general, but life lived well, you have to pay attention to things. You have to examine things. If we just go through life plowing through, how much satisfaction is there? Okay, how much empathy do we have for other people? And he's very much the philosopher king type. And so he's trying to give us an idea of how important it is to him that we pay attention to what we do and we think about what our response should be. Okay, trying to be consistent in how we explain and walk through life is difficult. One day our emotions are one way, one day we're tired, and so things don't make quite as much sense. And that's okay. It's kind of a balance overall as we go along. A couple other pieces here, and I like the way Dr. Vaughn sets up the book. His little cartoons and things. But he gets at a lot of interesting ideas here. Critical thinking also offers a defense against error, manipulation, and prejudice. Um, our current country status, our current world status, people are always upset because other folks aren't like them. And either through fear or through manipulation or through prejudice, um, they tend, we all tend to be afraid of things we don't understand. And when people are afraid, they do some really stupid things. Um, Fear can be a good thing, gives us a little bit of push at times, a little bit of anxiety for a test, a little bit of stress for a project is good. But when we go too far, things tend to fall apart. One of the things about critical thinking is it helps us understand reality based on true things. And we're talking about kind of objective truth, okay? Not what's true for us in this minute because we're mad, okay? Or what's true in this moment because we're grieving, or because we've had too much caffeine or whatever. But what's true if we sit down and think about it, okay? If we look at things from kind of outside of our current situation, that's the critical thinking part. And there's a little bit of that in everything we do, but we tend to kind of go overboard a little bit. Prejudice, think of how it's put together as a word, prejudging. Prejudice is when you judge somebody, but you don't know them. Okay, you judge them based on your experience with somebody else. Sometimes that can be a positive thing. Not very often, though. Prejudice has this kind of negative connotation to it, so that we think, okay, if they're prejudiced against me, they've already decided that I'm a bad person or that I'm not worthy of the job or I can't do it, based on not even knowing me, not even asking me whether I can or want to. And so we have a lot of people who are automatically, for one reason or another, against a certain type of person. And they put that against onto a particular person. Okay, that's prejudice. When we put it on a whole group of people, especially when that group of people has been in the past and is currently oppressed for some reason. In the United States, of course, we have a lot of racist issues because we tend not to confront our past very well. People get upset about things because this is the way we've always done it. And we're going to talk more about those kinds of issues in the next chapter. But for now, think about how people stereotype and are prejudiced against certain minorities, whether that's by skin color or sexual orientation or just what they look like, period. You see a large man with a lot of tattoos and riding a motorcycle, and you have certain ideas, stereotypes about that person. You probably, if you don't know him, you don't know that he's a deacon in his church, and he's a grandpa, and he has all these wonderful things about him. He's a big teddy bear. He give you the shirt off his back kind of person, but you don't know that. And you can't know that because you put up this wall thinking, oh, he's got to be some, mean, nasty person. And that's not true. This is not true all the time. Give you an example. I grew up in a very, very conservative Christian home. And, well, family anyway. And my family still is to a large point, very adamantly opposed to same-sex orientation. And so anything, all the derogatory terms and all of that, there was no way they would ever, Anyway, I have a cousin who was always everybody's handyman. He's a computer programmer, so he has a high-pressure job, but he spent his evenings and weekends taking care of everybody's stuff. Mow the grass for my grandma, especially after my grandpa died. He took over kind of taking care of her house, replaced the toilet, he was the one you called when you needed an extra pair of hands. and he was always willing to come and help. So everybody loved him. Well, turns out he's gay. He has a partner. They've been together for quite a while. And this was years and years ago, probably by now about 15 years ago. He and his partner had been working with an AIDS organization to provide housing and medical care for folks who didn't have, whose families had abandoned them or whatever. And it was going to be in the newspaper in my hometown on Sunday, lifestyle section. They had done this big spread on this new clinic and residence hall kind of thing. And of course, there he is, front page of the paper kind of thing. And so everybody was going to know. His immediate family knew, a few of his other cousins like me and another friend knew, but he hadn't publicized it very much. And so he went to my grandmother, who at the time I think was 80-something, and said, "Grandma, do you know what it means to be gay?" And she said, "Well, yeah, I watch the news and stuff." And he told her that he was gay, and here's what's going to go in the newspaper and stuff. And he was prepared for her to disown him. And she said, "Are you still Brian? Are you still my grandson?" "Well, yeah." "How come I haven't met this boy yet?" And like it was no big deal, because it isn't. And so once Grandma, who was the matriarch of our family, said, "I want to meet him, bring him over for dinner tomorrow," nobody else could really say anything against him. And of course, everybody loved Brian already, and we have embraced his partner, and it's fine. Now they're advocates. But it took knowing someone, loving someone already, to kind of break down that wall. And I think that's a good illustration of what it takes when you think critically about other human beings. There's no way we should treat anybody differently just because they're X or Y or Z. It's just not. So anyway, back on track, sorry. One of the things that you also need to have in your little heads running around is the definition of a statement, okay? Now, there are lots of ways to think about statements, but in the book, on page 9 at the top there, it says a statement is an assertion, okay, that something is or is not the case, okay? So the door's closed. That's an assertion. I hate making videos. That's an assertion. Statements, claims, beliefs, and what was the other one? Premises are all pretty much the same idea. Okay, they're a statement of fact. Something is this way, something is not this way. And so things like questions. How cold is it in this room? That's a question. It is very cold in this room. That's a statement. You have to be careful when you're looking at different arguments and different explanations to kind of rule out things as statements that are questions, that are exclamations, that are commands. The typical, "Did you clean your room?" Go clean your room. Okay, go clean your room is a command, and it's not really a statement. Now, if somebody said your room is disaster area, that's a statement. Okay. The last piece here for our big word, is at the middle of page 10. It's argument, a group of statements in which some of them, the premises, are intended to support another of them, the conclusion. So in this case, and how we're going to think about arguments in this class, an argument is a presentation of ideas used to support a central claim. Okay, if you've had English 112, you know about arguments and claims. English 111, we did a little bit of that too. But think about premises lead to conclusions. That's the whole deal for an argument. It doesn't have to be angry or passionate or forceful, but it does have to have a central claim, and then basically reasons to back it up. Okay, premises, reasons to back it up. There are a few other things in this chapter that I think are important. On page 13, we have a list of indicator words. They're kind of shorthand, right? They are words that tell us, hey, here's a premise. Okay, things like because, given that, seeing that, since. Um, since it's only 64 degrees in this room, it is very cold. Okay. Um, there are other ones that kind of show up, point to, indicate a conclusion. Therefore, thus, consequently, so. It must be that, as a result of. Okay, so you have a few, so there's a conclusion. You have a few pieces that you can look for to kind of point the way out for you. Not all arguments have them. Okay, so just because there's not a because or so or therefore, it doesn't mean you don't have an argument. These are just really nice, happy things that some authors will give us so we know exactly where we're going. Okay, they don't always show up though. There are a few fun things here about political straw, and there are lots of those available right now because we're in a presidential election cycle. And so he has a little bit of newsmakers, a little bit of further thought. He also has these nice little boxes called review notes. Okay, and he'll give you kind of a here's what you need to know, and then he goes on to something else. They're very nice to have. Sometimes when we have processes or steps to do, he'll put them all in one piece, and that's very nice. There's a good one on page 16. And then at the end of the chapter, we have our little box of keywords on page 18, these guys. You can look those up in the glossary, or you can look them up in the book, in this chapter. They'll be the same. Okay, so if you're looking for a quicker way to do it, go to the glossary at the end of the book, and you'll have some things there. He also gives us a summary at the end, tells us what we've learned. My advice to you, especially when we get to like chapter 6 and 7, read the summary first. That way your brain has sort of a scaffold for the rest of the chapter, and you go back in and read the chapter, and it's much easier. Okay. It also helps you figure out, okay, where was that particular idea? You can look back there because some of the chapters are long. The exercises start on page 20, and the list of the ones I want you to do are on Blackboard under week 1. There'll also be an announcement up there with the week at a glance kind of thing. If you have questions, don't forget to talk to me. Give me a call, or send me a text, send me an email, and I'll be happy to answer questions for you. Okay? Well, happy day, and we'll see about chapter 2 here shortly. Okay? This is going to be weird because my computer has been stupid, so you just have to deal with me kind of standing here close. Sorry.